Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. Doug here with Calbermind with your sixth tip for annual planning. I'm going to talk today about measuring channel level ROI. Won't shock you that I'm going to take you into our ROI tab, but I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick that I use to think about ROI in terms of how different channels impact a multi-channel model, where the goal is to create engagement and then nurture engagement to the point that you're generating revenue. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm in our attribution product. And the first thing I'm going to do here in the attribution product is to sort of take a look and eyeball what's going on. And what I'm seeing here is color coding of the various channels and how they're contributing to our pipeline over time. See, this is starting in Q1 2023 through the yet to be completed Q3 2024. And so what this allows me to do is to sort of zero in on changes over time, and also sort of foundationally, what are the things that are driving activity? And as you can see, I don't know if there's a country flag that is red, teal, and purple. If there is, go whatever country you're in. But what you're going to see is that in many ways, we have a three-legged approach, if you will. There's a lot more to our multi-channel model than that. But in terms of what's driving ROI and what's driving pipeline, it's really these three channels. And then for us, that is SEO, performance marketing, and our sales prospecting. So if I take a look at these here, what I'm going to see is this. There was a point where we were relatively flat over time. If we're going to look at a trend line here, it's going to be pretty steady. What changed? Well, performance marketing. And this is something that the team and I have worked on quite a bit over the last. And what I'm going to point to here is that a lot of this pipeline growth we're seeing is coming from performance marketing. So we're talking about tip 6, measure channel level ROI. What I'm going to tell you is this. In an environment where growth is so hard to come by, you need to look at your channels, not always from an ROI standpoint, but from a growth standpoint. What I mean by that is the value of growth will sometimes stand above ROI. So in the case for this data, the value of growth here is really, really, really important, because what we're seeing is that performance marketing is driving a lot of growth. So as I'm looking at the performance marketing channel, and I'm seeing that it's a major growth driver, meaning it's really elastic, I'm going to sort of keep that in mind, because ultimately, performance marketing is extremely elastic. It's also extremely expensive, but it is getting growth. And guess what happens? Growth tends to beget growth. In other words, as your performance marketing improves, your SEO tends to improve as well. So again, what I'm seeing is that performance marketing is a highly valuable channel. I'm going to look at its ROI a little differently, because at the end of the day, it is a huge growth driver for where this organization is currently. Okay, so in terms of measuring channel level ROI, I've switched over now. I'm in the ROI tab in the Calbermind Marketing Decision Engine. I've got this really cool table here that I love looking at that tells me by channel, what's my pipeline ROI, and then what's my bookings ROI. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to spend a moment, and here's my hack for everybody. I'm going to look at this through a series of different attribution models. End of the day, our ROI module is a cost layer that sits on top of our attribution model. So the underlying performance is quite often dictated by the attribution model you're choosing. So before I make that switch, what I'm going to do is just ask you to take a look at a channel. In this case, I'm looking at SEO. And what I'm seeing is that my pipeline ROI is about 8-1. Not a shock. SEO is such a great channel. It's also incredibly inelastic, requires a lot of resources and time. And you're dealing with the vagaries of Google search engines and the declining search volume. By the way, Google's not going to tell you that, but that's happening. So more competitive in a smaller and smaller set of data with SEO these days. So what I've done is I'm looking at even weighted, but I'm going to switch this over. I'm going to take a look at first touch. So if you recall, I'm at 8-1. What is SEO from a first touch standpoint? It's really interesting. So 8 is what my even weighted is. 5 is what my first touch is. Let's see what my last touch looks like. It's going to give me a really interesting range. Okay. So Between 5 and 8. Last touch is about 6 to 1. Even weighted, it's about 8 to 1. First touch is about 5 to 1. Okay, so why am I sharing this with you? What difference does that make? Well, it tells me a couple things about my channel ROI. The first thing is I've got a pretty consistent range. Again, this is just SEO. That's telling me I have a channel that is contributing across the funnel, meaning it is useful as a first touch, it is useful as a mid touch, and that's even weighted, and it's showing up and it is really useful as a last touch. So what I'm saying to you folks is this: measure your ROI. If you have an ROI tool like CaliberMind, fantastic. But look at it through different lenses. The first lens is, how are channels contributing to the overall macro growth of the company? So as I'm looking at performance marketing and I'm seeing, in this case, a relatively low ROI, I'm okay with that because it's driving growth. And I know that as a category, as a channel over time, what that's going to do is it's going to lead to more efficiencies for other channels. So I'm going to be okay with this 1.8 to 1. And I actually know that it's higher. It's about 4 to 1 when I look at a chain-based model, which is for another video. The other thing I'm looking at is sort of what is the range for each channel? And as if you recall for SEO, what we were seeing is that it shows up really well depending, no matter what the attribution model is. So the quick tip here is always manage channel ROI, but make sure you're using different lenses. Look at its role across the funnel, and also look at the macro view. If you're driving for growth and you've got a channel that's delivering that growth, look at it that way. If you are looking to reduce costs but maintain growth, you're going to look at something like performance marketing and say, are there other channels that I can use to balance it out? Thanks for spending some time with me, folks, today for tip 6. Thanks so much.